This is a paper bag. I think most of us recognize this and understand what it is, but did you know there was a time when black people would hold this up against someone's skin to see if they were light enough? Let's talk about colorism. This is something I hadn't really thought a lot about, to be honest with you, but my friend Kyla from college brought it up and suggested it for a video topic. And after looking into it a bit, I realized how important this information could be to a lot of people, myself included. Colorism is a differential treatment based on the color of your skin. Favoritism towards those with lighter skin tones, mistreatment for those with darker skin tones, typically amongst those of the same racial or ethnic groups. This applies to pretty much any person of color, but for this video, I'm going to be looking at the black community since that was the original request. For a quick example, think about your favorite black female musician. Who comes to mind? Beyonce, Alicia Keys, Nicki Minaj maybe, Sierra. Did any dark-skinned celebrities come to mind when thinking about that? Well, of course, these women worked extremely hard to get where they're at. It would be foolish of us not to acknowledge that there is preferential treatment to those that are closer to the Eurocentric ideals of the world. This is in general, but also in the black community. So in this video, I'm going to be going over a brief history of how colorism began, talking more in depth about the paper bag test, and then giving lots of examples and some facts about how this affects everyone on a daily basis. So you might be wondering, how did this start? And like most terrible things in this country, it started with slavery and white people. Back in the day, slave owners would give preferential treatment to those that were lighter skinned. This meant that if you were a lighter skinned black slave, you would get to work in the house or work indoors, while darker skinned people, such as myself, and to be honest, I'm not even that dark, would be out in the fields doing that terrible field work in the hot sun all day long. This is perpetuated today. The darker you are, the dumber you are, the less attractive you are, the less successful you'll be. Whereas if you're lighter, there's a chance you might be more intelligent or can be more okay, you know? So another question you might be asking yourself is, how is there such a disparity between skin tones if back in the day a lot of these slaves were just straight from Africa? Well, first off, everybody's just different, and that's just how things work. So you can be a very light-skinned black person and have two very dark parents. That's just how it goes. But on the other side, a lot of slave owners would rape the black slaves, and then their mixed children would end up working for them as slaves. So in like a weird way, they were nicer to lighter-skinned slaves because they might be their own mixed children, but still slaves, of course. So this meant that being lighter skinned as a slave had its advantages within the slave community, and this is kind of how colorism evolved to what it is today. As you know, slavery is done. It took long enough to get rid of it, but these same ideas are still going on, which is actually a great tie-in to the paper bag test, which I'll talk about now. So there was a time when upper-class, light-skinned black people would actually take a paper bag, and at the entrance of their clubs, their societies, and if people wanted to join their social circles, they would hold it up to their face, and if you weren't lighter than it, you could not come in. As I mentioned when this started, if you weren't light enough, you weren't good enough, which was how that same idea started back with slavery. There was even a little jingle from the Jim Crow era that kind of exemplifies this in a great way, so I'll read it for you. If you is white, you's all right. If you's brown, stick around. But if you's black, brother, get back, get back, get back. So not only do we have to deal with racism, we have to deal with discrimination within our own community. And this is why this is important to understand, I think. So let's look at some examples and some facts about how this affects people. Take a look at this photo, for example. Most of these men are extremely successful and actually relatively dark comparatively, but every single one of their wives is very light-skinned. A connection that could be made to the upper class light skin narrative I just mentioned with the paper bag test. So again, just reiterating the point that even within the black community, there's this perception that if you are lighter skinned, that you are better than those of darker complexion, that you deserve and are more likely to be successful than people that are darker. And the examples go on and on. One that is commonly heard is darker skinned people saying to lighter skinned people that you're not black enough to have all your own opinions about the black community, that you can't weigh in on black topics because you don't understand, which is completely ridiculous because to a racist, black is black, no matter what shade. And on the other side, lighter skinned people looking down on darker skinned people because they aren't as attractive. And there's a whole distinction because if you think about it, we are all black people, if you will, but then there's light skinned black people, which is like creating a category within a category, which again is part of the problem. And then in the rap world, we have people like Kanye. Don't get me started on him right now. Do not vote for him. Who had a casting call for a music video that had only multiracial women, again, excluding dark-skinned women, if you will, and even rappers such as Kodak Black, who said in an interview that he doesn't date people of his complexion and he's pretty dark. Black is in his name because he thinks they're too gutta. So let's look at some facts. Dark-skinned women are less likely to be married than light-skinned women. Light-skinned people receive more job opportunity than dark-skinned people. Lighter-skinned black women receive shorter sentences than dark-skinned black women if they commit the same crime. Dark-skinned people are twice as likely to get the death penalty versus light-skinned counterparts that commit the same or similar crimes. Light-skinned black people are perceived to be smarter and more intelligent. There's a whole industry dedicated to skin lightening, which is an interesting topic because of the irony of how white people love to tan and then make jokes about how they're getting dark, which is interesting because it's a problem within the black community, but that's a topic for another video. And one more, dark-skinned people receive more microaggressions, probably because people view them as more black, which again is a problem. So what's the point of all this? I mean, as everyone knows, knowledge is power, so just more information is always good. But as I mentioned when I started, this is something I've never thought about, and I think that more people should. Obviously, racism is a huge issue we're dealing with right now, but to be cognizant and understand that this is another thing within it and that everyone's experience as a black person is different is going to be really important when you're having these conversations with your friends, family, and future people. So I hope this information was helpful or at least a bit educational. If you're interested in learning more, I'm going to link a bunch of resources down below because there's a ton of videos and a ton of articles on this that people go into it a lot more in depth and share their own experiences. Especially this one video that's linked first. Please check that out. It's 6 women talking about their experiences and they're all different shades of black, which I think is really cool. You can find all of my videos on my website, BelieveDivergent.com. You can also buy a shirt. So check that out if you want to. If you have any video ideas, topics, ideas that you want me to cover, please hit me up. I'll add it to the list. I already have some really great ones in the queue. For now, keep pushing for social justice. This is just the beginning. No matter how big or small your platform is, every little bit counts. For now, peace out.
And then